I want a few more people to come in before I give you the floor to tell us a little bit about you, Daria. So let's just give it just another minute. I'm waiting for it to let me share it out. If you're just joining us, thank you so much, Amy, and a few others of y'all. If you can share it out, for some reason it's not letting me share it. So I know I don't understand how this TikTok platform works, but sometimes it'll let me share it out and other times it won't. It might change. I've seen it do that too. It starts out not letting me share it, but then all of a sudden the share button pops up. So anyway, we will give that just a minute so we can get a few more people in here. We've got a few. Daria, while we're waiting on people, I haven't actually met you to talk to you, just in texting and stuff. So tell us a little bit about you and what you write and how you got started in it, or whatever you want to tell us.
Sure. So I got into writing because I always loved writing. I think when I was 11, I took this class, and our teacher, she had us writing poetry and stuff like that. So I knew I had a love for writing since I was 11. And then I went through college. I took some writing classes as electives. And I had this professor, this creative writing professor, and she really had a certain type of writing that she gravitated towards.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as my writing, she used to be pretty critical. Like, she told me she felt like my happy endings were too cliche, things like that. And she would mark down my writing, not based on like I had these mistakes, but just her subjective opinions.
Right.
So it was really discouraging, because I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to listen to her. And she'd give me all these tips that I held on to for a while. So one of the tips was, she told me that I needed to try to branch out and do something that wasn't based on just happy ever afters. I'm like, okay. So I tried to do that, and I started writing a dystopian at one point. But I tell people I'm like an emotional sponge. So what I'm doing, as a person, it's like, it just absorbs me, and I'm the same way, even when I'm reading or I'm watching television, just seeing things that are super emotional, it can really affect how I feel.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I felt when I was writing. It's almost like, am I a method writer? You hear method actors.
Right.
Yeah. So
But I totally see that, and I'm the same way. When I'm writing, I forget to eat, go to the bathroom. I mean, life outside of my office stops. So yeah, I totally understand that.
yes, absolutely. It's interesting because I wish I could be more like that, where I could, I could have finished the dystopian. One of my coworkers, she alpha read some of the chapters, and she's like, I really like this. You really need to finish it. Maybe I'll go back to it. But it just felt kind of gloomy for me. So
Yeah.
then, a few years ago, I had two really significant losses. Two people really close to me passed. And I was kind of in this dark place. And every time I put on the TV or anything, it just seemed like every time I turned around, somebody was passing away in the new stuff that I was watching. Or, or I had a small kid, and I was even trying to put on like these kid shows, and it blew my mind how many children are orphans in kids shows due to parent death. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like postpartum, I do not need this in my life.
Yeah, for real.
So, so I, was in the state of postpartum. Grief was heavy. Everything I was putting on was just really, really dark material. Even if it was supposed to be a rom-com, there was dark stuff in it. That was just like, I need more control of my entertainment.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about all the positives that I've always known about creativity. Like, if you open that creative place in your brain, it opens these neural pathways in your brain that makes you feel joy. It makes you happier.
Yeah.
And I was like, I absolutely need this while I'm going through this season of grief. So I started writing. And I was doing it more as like this silly idea that I had in my head that I was just writing out for fun. I thought it would be maybe like a short novella. I didn't even know that I was going to publish it. I was just doing it for the fun part of it.
Right.
And it was almost addicting. Before I knew it, I was staying up every single night
Oh,
just to
wow.
write because I would get my son down and then I would rush and go try to write. And I stayed up way too many nights for 2 years straight. And you learned recently, you said you didn't know, but I'm going through cancer treatment. So I always tell authors, whatever you do, get your sleep. Don't skip on sleep for writing
Yeah.
because apparently
Yeah.
those 2 years took its toll on me not sleeping.
Yeah.
Well, I was sleeping, but I wasn't sleeping enough.
Right. Like you're supposed to be. And
Hmm.
I hate that you're going through that with the postpartum and with the cancer. Those are two very, very harsh diseases,
Well,
disruptions into our system.
yeah, I was past the postpartum part when I actually went ahead and finished my book up, put it through editing, and I was excited. I was like, great, I'm
Yes.
making a little bit of money and in my business that I was working in. I was like, I can take some of this money and I can put it towards investing in my writing, which
Yeah.
is, as we know, a very expensive hobby.
Mhm.
So then I was getting ready to publish my book, and that's when I got the diagnosis. It was like 2.5 weeks before it was time to release my
Oh my
book.
gosh.
Yes.
That's
So,
terrible.
yeah. And then, of course, I had to put my day job on hold because there was no way. I'm like, I can't even process my emotions right now about everything, much less go and, keep working my day job.
Yeah.
I've just been focused more because I've had people ask me, when's book two coming out since this is supposed to be a series? I'm like,
Mhm.
I definitely see myself having to write even slower. It took me 2 years to write book one. So my goal is hopefully to get draft one done by the end of this year. That's the small goal I'm setting for myself because right now I'm having so much thrown at me. I ended up having my double mastectomy surgery. Then I had chemotherapy and I'm straight out radiation. I finished radiation yesterday.
Good for you. I knew you had a radiation treatment, but that's your last one.
That was my last one. I did 6 weeks.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you've got that behind you. You can just allow your heart, mind, and spirit to heal now because that's so important. And I've never been through that, but I have had several friends that have been through that. And what they've told me, once it's over, that's great and it's good, but you need to take another 6 months or a year to heal your mind and your body and your spirit and recover from all you've been through. So that's very important too. It's wonderful to have a goal though, especially something you enjoy. From my understanding, is creative juices are just wonderful, especially when you're going through something like that. Most writers I know, including myself, our writing is part of our catharsis for all the troubles that life sends us. So, we may not write about it per se. You might not write about cancer, but as you're writing about your character's healing and whatever trauma they went through, it's also helping you to heal inside too. So I think that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. I didn't expect you to share your personal. I certainly wouldn't if I was leaving that up to you, but I know that that's a personal journey and I'm glad that you've conquered it and you're doing well. Um, how old is your child? Do you mind if I ask?
He's 4 now.
4. Okay, good, good. Well, I'm glad that you're going to be around for him and have, one thing I found too in my writing, it's kind of our legacy because regardless of whether cancer or something else comes along, my mother's 90, but one day we're all going to be gone. And so our books are our legacy that our kids can pick up and our grandkids can pick up and get to know us a little bit through our book. So I love that you're writing. I love that for you now, for the healing, and also for your lineage. Your kids and grandkids and great grandkids will have this forever to be able to look back and say, this is what great great granny wrote. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know if I'll, that kind of makes me squirm in my chair when I think about like my kids or grandkids reading my work because it does
well,
have
maybe
some
they might not
spice
read it
in
until
it.
they're grown.
Exactly.
um, So from that statement, should I surmise that you write spicy books?
Um, I would definitely say my books have spice in it, but I do try to do the whole just enough spice. I think me and Amy down below have had this conversation, Amy Lucille, because she's part of the Indie Hype Collective, which is the group that we run on a TikTok to help promote indie authors. But me and Amy were talking one day, and I told her, I said, yeah, sometimes I pick up romance books and it's like spice scene, spice scene, spice scene, and
Yeah.
it's just nonstop to the point that I feel like, okay, we get it, you do it,
Yeah.
you know? So I didn't, when I was writing my book, it does have two open door, very detailed scenes because as a reader, I always feel cheated or gypped when there's not enough,
Not total, right.
So I definitely put two detailed scenes in there, but I tried not to overdo it because I am also a plot heavy person. I want the story to have a plot. I want things to tie in. I don't want plot holes.
Yeah. And before I answer or comment on that, I just wanted to thank everyone that's joined us. We've got Keith and Amy and several other people. I'm trying to look at the comments and listen and talk and everything at the same time. And I don't do that too well anymore. I'm getting too old for multitasking. But if you don't mind, if you just joined us, you already know me, but this is Daria. Did I say that right again?
Yes, that was
Daria
great.
Kay. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, she writes romantic, semi-spicy books, and we're talking to her tonight. So I wanted to say the same thing though, because I was having this discussion with somebody just the other day that some books, it's not about the plot, it's not about the character depth, it's not about anything. It's literally just word PORN. I don't know if we're supposed to say that on here, so I'll spell it. It's literally just word, PORN. And so, and I don't like that either. I don't mind some spice, even 3 or 4 chili peppers, if it's done tastefully and if it's done sporadically. But if the whole book and every chapter is them just going at it like rabbits, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good. So I'm a single woman too, so I sure don't want to be reading that stuff. That's not good for me. Well, let's delve into your books a little bit and into you. I noticed on your bio when I was reading that it mentions that your writing became a refuge during a time of profound loss, and you were talking about that earlier. Looking back, what did your writing give you that real life could not during that time to help you through that time?
It gave me a sense of control. Because when you think about it, when you're going through grief, you have no control. I think I wrote in one of, because I had a grief journal I was writing it. I started with a grief journal, and I remember describing it like feeling like I was in a life preserver. Like, I would just imagine myself being in one of those tubes in middle of the ocean, and you're just sitting there like the sun beaming on you, waiting to be rescued, is what I described in my journal. I felt like grief was like when I was going through it so heavy. And when I was writing, it gave me a sense of control. I could make this fun world, and I could make these characters that I thought were hilarious and messy and all of the things, and it just kind of have that sense of control of just my environment could be happy, even if it was for that time while I was writing, while I was typing away on my laptop, that hey, this is this world I've sucked myself into, and it doesn't feel like I'm in this life preserver floating around in the middle of the ocean of grief and despair. And that was nice to have that escape when I was in the depths of the grief I was experiencing at that time.
I love that description. I've never heard grief compared to being a life preserver, but that is so profound. What a great description. And just the helplessness of it, because I've suffered a lot of loss in my life too. And I've always told my kids when they go through things, my son recently lost his dog. And I know that's no comparison, but he's 26 and he's had this dog since he was like 10. So it was for him. And I said, grief is the hardest part of life to me because it's, like you just said, you can't control it and you have to go through it. You can't control it. You can't do anything about it. And I love that description you get. I'm going to probably steal that from you next time something comes up about grief. And I have actually found that a lot of writers, we are all kind of writing from that same place. And it's kind of like reading in that it takes you away from your own life's troubles during that time that you're reading and writing. And I really like that description. That's the perfect description.
Yeah, I think, but the difference is the creative aspect of it, because there is something in the brain that turns on. Not saying that reading doesn't have its perks. Reading can be great. It can provide the escapism, but there's something about creation when you're doing art or you're writing or anything like that. It literally opens parts of your brain that brings joy, feelings of joy and happiness. And I think that was the thing I needed at that time, was this book. And it was interesting because I had a lot of guilt about making this book. I come from the South. I come from the Bible Belt.
I'm still here.
Yeah, we can tell by our accents, right? What southern state are you from?
Georgia. I live in Columbus, Georgia.
Yeah, I'm from North Carolina, but I live in South Carolina now. And so I had a lot of hesitation about publishing my book, because when you come from the Bible Belt and you come from this place of, always thinking, okay, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Is this in my life plan? And you're like, well, I wrote a smutty book. It's okay.
I know you're waiting for the thunderbolt to come down at any moment.
Yeah. People just, I don't know that everybody knows that, but I think a lot of people in the South can attest to that, especially if you come from the southern areas that are, it's really indoctrinated in the culture for people to be religious, like it's part of the culture. Yeah. And it definitely was from the town I grew up in, which ended up being the town I set my book in.
Oh.
But yeah. And it's funny. The second and third book is going to be a lot about religious trauma and religious abuse, because of where I came from. But the book itself, I was like, okay, am I going to release this? Does this have purpose? And I started thinking about, but I did incorporate so many things that I thought was purposeful, even though the book itself, if you read it, has kind of like those cringe comedy, American Pie, Mindy Kaling vibes. I even say I'll be the Adam Sandler of rom-coms, because when my editor was reading this, she was like, this book is not like normal rom-coms. Most people who pick up rom-coms like that fluffiness. Yeah. And she's like, you put in humor, like you even have potty humor in it. And she's like, I don't know. I'm not saying that there's not a niche market for it. She goes, but this might not call to the mainstream rom-com readers. Okay. And of course I went and stewed about it, because I'm like, geez, I just paid all this money for this editor. And, I love my editor, because I actually knew her. I worked with her at one point. But I was like, am I going to have to change my whole book? And I started talking over with my friends, and they were like, girl, if you take that out of that book, I'm going to slap you. They're like, it's hilarious. So my book itself does have a lot of messy, silly, cringe comedy elements to it, but I did try to incorporate things that I thought was really important in the plot. Wow. So some of the things that I felt like brought it purpose was, for one, I portrayed different characters with bipolar disorder throughout the book, because I wanted to show how bipolar disorder could present in people very different, especially from the community I came from, because when I was there, I seen a lot of people who presented as one of the characters. I came from a very violent community. There's a lot of violence there too. It's rural, a lot of poverty, just a lot of violent crime happens there. So when I moved away, and then I realized that I, I was working at this one job, and I started having to see certain people that were having certain situations, and I seen people that were diagnosed with bipolar that had some of those same characteristics. I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to put this in my book, because if people back home read this book, since it takes place from home, maybe people will see, like, maybe there's a lot of undiagnosed mental health that's going on there.
And there's certainly is everywhere.
Yeah, well, and especially when you come from going back to it, coming from a community that is so indoctrinated in religion, a lot of it was like, oh, they're just like jerks, and they just need to get their life right with Jesus and stuff like that. But then once I started seeing, like, oh, like there's some people that completely flip if they're on the right medication, and they're normal and they're not such jerks, you know. So there, that was part of it. Like, I wanted to touch on mental health. I wanted to incorporate, so my characters are young. The FMC's 18, the MMC's 21.
Okay.
I wanted to touch on the fact of having an MMC, and he makes a really stupid mistake in the book that he has to grovel from and all that. So he's not perfect. But it comes from a place of him just being oblivious. Like, that's part of his character flaw, is he's just an oblivious person.
Right.
But as an MMC, I wanted him to be a good MMC. Like, I wanted, when I think about when I was 18 to 21 and I was watching certain shows and stuff, I was drawn to these characters, these male characters that were kind of aloof and kind of jerks and not great boyfriends. And I feel like it influenced my dating life back then.
Yeah, for sure.
To have a character who was a 21-year-old man, I wanted to show a character that underneath it all was actually a good person. Now, it does talk about some of his backstory when he was in high school, and him being kind of led by his friend group that made him make some really bad decisions. Okay. But by the time he comes into the storyline, he's changed, he's evolved, and he's, would be a great partner to, within his age range. So that was something that was really important to me. And I don't know if it'll stay that way, but I do plan to keep doing that with this series, is to try to make sure that the MMCs are overall good partners. They're not just, this idea, because I think when you're in that age range, you're very impressionable, and you see these really aloof characters that, I'll give an example. I don't know if you remember this, but Jared Leto was in the show. It was in the 90s. I remember watching it and just being like, oh, he's so hot. He's so great. But he was horrible. His name was Jordan in the show, Jordan Catalani or something like that. My So-Called Life. Do you remember that show, My So-Called Life? Claire Danes was in it.
I didn't watch that. I was busy in the 90s.
Yeah, but he was just kind of like, not so great to Claire Danes' character. And I always idolized this idea when I was like, probably from the age of, from watching that to the age of probably about 21, thinking, oh my goodness, I want, I want a guy like Jordan from My So-Called Life. Yeah. And he was a horrible boyfriend. He ended up, fooling around with Claire Danes. Her name was Angela in the show, but he ended up fooling around with her friend and stuff. And yeah, it was just a mess.
I think there's something in, I don't believe in the whole dysfunctional and functional families. I've rarely met a family or a person that I would call, normal. I think we're all dysfunctional in different ways. But yeah, I think there's something in us when we're dysfunctional, especially if we come from a dysfunctional area and family, that we look for other dysfunctional people, maybe in a different way, maybe that we can fix their dysfunction because we can't fix our own dysfunction, or for whatever reason. I'm not a psychologist, but I think we are all drawn to that, bad boy, and those bad boys of Hollywood, the ones that we fall in love with and love. And the problem in real life is that they screw up your life when you fall in love with them in real life and you end up 62 and single. So I totally get that. But I like and appreciate the fact that your teacher caught on to your gravitating to the happily ending after. And I actually, all my books end in the happily ever after, but I wouldn't say that they're all perfect. A lot of them seem to be that way. They're floating off into the sunset, but some of their happily ever afters are not perfect. They have their issues and their functions, and dysfunction thing that they have to work through. But when your teacher told you that, how did that criticism shape the kind of stories that you tell? Or do you still do the happily ever after, or did you completely?
Yeah, absolutely. Going full circle, because I'm horrible at getting lost, and when I'm telling about certain things, for one, my attention's horrible, but then I have a human brain. So I'm glad you brought me back to that. She did. Like I said, I tried to go and write these darker stories, and I struggled to finish any of them because it emotionally affected me. And I find myself feeling happier when I'm writing these stories that are happily ever afters, when I'm writing stories that are funny, or bring some comedy to things. So I throw everything she said out the window, because she definitely gave me some tips without really giving guidance. I used to write in first person. She told me I needed to be more versatile, and she felt like my stories were one-dimensional because I wrote in first person and I needed to write in third person. So I actually wrote my book in third person because of that. But she didn't give me the full information about like third person omniscient, third person limited. Right. And in reality, the audience I was writing for, if I would have known this at the time, but I knew it after I wrote my book, a lot of the younger audience actually prefers dual first person. So, writing one chapter in the female's voice and then writing the next chapter in the male's voice and going back and forth first person. But I wrote in third person and I was head hopping. So when I sent my book to my first editor, I had two editors. She told me about head hopping. I'm like, why didn't that professor go over this? She just went over third person in general.
I'm not familiar with that. Head hopping, you're saying?
Yes. So when you're head hopping, it's almost like, so that would be more like third person omniscient, which used to be wrote more commonly, probably a century ago, a long time ago.
Exactly.
Where you would be almost like a fly in the wall, and you're describing like you're describing from various things. Like it's not just one person's point of view. It's almost like, oh, well, he was feeling this and he said this. Then she said this and she was feeling this. And it's not, it's very confusing for the readers. So they say you want to really do more third person limited. So I had to go back and basically rewrite all my chapters, which was a lot of work, to the point that I was like, okay, each chapter I had to pick, do I want to be in the male's point of view as a third person writer? And the next chapter, do I want to be in the female's point of view? And go from there. And that took a lot of work. That really took me.
I can't even imagine.
Yes.
Wow.
Took about 6 months to redo.
A lot. That's a lot. Because back in my day when I was reading, almost everything was third person, and third person omniscient was very, very, very common. So a couple of my first earlier books I wrote in that way, and about 3 or 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to add the dual first person point of view to at least one of my books, Still the Tide. And it took me months. It took me longer to do that than it did to write the dang book in the first place. It was such a pain in the butt. And then when I edited it, 99% of the things I had to edit were because I had changed that and done that. And so certain things got left undone. So I can definitely respect that you had to go back and do all that. It's a nightmare. So.
Yeah, one of the people who arc read for me, she's an author too, but she writes in first person, and she switches from, each chapter from like the MMC to the FMC.
But that hasn't, that's only been probably, I don't know, last 5, 6, maybe 10 years that's become popular. And now it seems like it's the mainstream thing to do. And like literally the last 5 or 6 books I've written are all that way. So, and to me, I actually find it easier. I think I've always written in first person, but, or for the most part, but the dual point of view was new to me, and that was new. I mean, I had to, because you have to switch, you have to make the voice different, or it defies the purpose of having dual point of view if you are just saying different sides of the story, but from the same voice. And so it's hard to do. But that's how everybody seems to want it now, is a dual point of view, first person. So yeah.
Yeah, but she had told me it was like she's like, I don't even know how you wrote this in third person, but it's very well written. So I thought that was a great compliment to come from another author, especially it being my debut, to have someone tell me that they were really impressed with my ability to write it in third person.
That is cool. And I honestly, I don't read a lot of third person now. I'm reading one now that's actually Charmin McGraw's book, Dying to Date. I'm rereading it. I read it, I don't know, a year or so ago, and her next book's about to come out. And so I wanted to reread it so it was fresh on my mind, because I can't remember crap. I have a terrible memory. So I'm rereading it, and it's third person. But she does it so well, I didn't even cognitively realize it was third person until probably the second or third chapter. And because normally I don't care for third person as much. And but she does a really good job of it. I can't wait. I've just downloaded your book, and I can't wait to read it. I've got several books I've got to read first, but I can't wait to delve into it, because I love the way that you were saying it's romantic comedy, but it has this heart and this soul to it. And that's what I love, is a book that has plot and character driven, and it's got some meat to it, I guess is the way I like to put it. But many authors write romance because they just love stories. And it sounds like you might be a little bit of one of those, since you were writing that way back when. But what deeper human truth are you really exploring beneath the romance?
I'm sorry, I got lost. I was looking at Amy's comment. She said hers is third person. That's way too many. Head stop.
Yes.
I get that, Amy, because she has her whole team of people going on the
That's
bench.
true. And I've arc read for her too, and she's right. But now I will say, and Amy does a beautiful job of it too. But when you have multiple characters like she does in her kids' books, you almost have to do third person, because if you're going to try to do, I read a book in college called While She Lay Dying. I don't know if you've ever read that. I don't know anyone that's not reading it for English lit class in college, but it is a book with, I don't know, 30 chapters or whatever. Every chapter is first person, but it's from a different character's point of view. So by the end of the book, you've literally been in everybody's head. And it's a little bit overwhelming, I won't lie. Even when I was in college, I was just like, oh my God, I don't like this. I don't like this. But when you have a lot of characters like she has in her books, and not just human characters, but, these fictional animalistic type characters, you always have to do third person. But again, Amy does a beautiful job of that too. You don't feel like you're outside of the story watching it. You still feel like you're a character in the story, which is what people like about the first person, because you're drawn into the story more. And in third person, sometimes you feel like you're on the outside just listening about their story. But Charmin and Amy both do a fabulous job with that. I can't wait to read yours. I can just tell, especially from your reviews and everything, that you obviously have done a fantastic job of doing yours as well.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I appreciate it. So, and I will say, I think one of the things that I like about third person though is when I was writing it, I felt like I was watching a movie in my head and I was just typing the movie out. And I've had people say when they've read my book, they felt like it played in their head as a movie. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that I feel like you said, when you're writing first person, you almost feel like you're in that person's shoes.
Mhm.
But third person, if it's done well, you feel like you're sitting there watching the movie happen, as long as there's enough that's building world building around you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I can completely relate to that too, because all of my book came to me from a dream. And my dreams feel like movies. So when I woke up, it was like I had watched this movie and I wrote down everything I could remember about it. And then as I'm writing it, it feels like I'm just relaying to the reader this movie that I watched. It's exactly what it feels like. So I definitely can relate to that. But I love that you put this, soul. I'm going to keep calling it soul because that's what I call it in your book, even though it's a rom-com, which so you're not going into a rom-com thinking that this is going to have some meat to it or something a message to take away from it. So, what is that deeper human truth that you built into this? Did that come from your grief that you were going through when you wrote it, or is that just something you consciously wanted to interject in it?
I think I pulled it from just different areas. So one of the things is the couple in it, the FMC and the MMC, they both are young caretakers. So, there was a part of one of my careers that I was working with people with disability and just really grew a love for for that community. So I wanted to have some disability representation. And in doing that, I've also have talked with a lot of people who have been caretakers, and they talked about the isolation of it and just different things like that. So I felt like, to have this 18-year-old whose mother struggles with mental illness and this 21-year-old guy who went to high school and hung out with the popular kids, and they were kind of butt heads to everybody around because they were the popular kids, and then ending up having this moment that both of his parents ended up being disabled, coming full circle, connecting with the 18-year-old who is like, oh, this is the girl who we made fun of her mom all the time because of all these episodes that she had in our small town, in our small community. Then, even the small town part of it. I grew up in a small town. I love the small town feel and the community, the sense of community. So I wanted to pull on that. So that was some of the subplots that were in there, touching on mental illness, touching on being a caregiver, touching on the community aspect, because that was something I seen a lot with COVID. Was there was a big loss of sense of community.
Yeah.
And when I grew up in Parkton, which is the hometown, it's my hometown, but it's the town that's in this book that I said, it was different. I was I had a single parent, so I could literally just walk around my neighborhood sometimes, and pick whose house I wanted to eat at. Like, go and ask them, like, hey, what are you guys cooking? I was kind of like the young kid that the community took care of. But now I live in a nice suburban area, and my one neighbor next to me, she stole my package that had like $60 worth of cleaning supplies. And the other one, if he sees us, he ducks his head and rushes in. And I'm just like, and it's like that in the whole neighborhood. It's very hard to find people that are friendly and want to talk. And I'm like, man, what happened to what happened to this world after COVID?
I grew up in a small town too, but we lived way out in the country, so I didn't get the full small town. I enjoyed spending the night with my friends because they lived in town, so we could go walking at night when the sun went down and stuff like that. I didn't have that going up. But what part of yourself would surprise readers to discover is buried inside of Edith?
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time?
Sure, of course. What part of yourself would surprise readers to discover is buried inside of Edith?
I think, see, Edith is the harder one for me, because there was somebody close to me that I lost, that I actually used as inspiration for Edith's character.
Okay.
Edith is just so good, and it reminds me of the person who inspired Edith's character, just having that heart of gold. I think the only thing that I kind of pulled from Edith is how I felt when I was her age. So she had just graduated high school, and she still had her B card when she graduated high school, which I was in the same boat back then. But the interesting thing is Edith's older sister, Veronica, is very opposite of her. She's promiscuous. She's the town's femme fatale. So Edith always felt like she was in her sister's shadow. Well, I didn't necessarily have that experience with siblings, but in my friendships, when I was Edith's age, when I was at that age, where I felt like I kind of fell into the shadows because the people pulled towards, the other direction, not the girl who was still holding on and felt like that was something special. So I think that's probably the part of Edith that I can say pulled from 18-year-old Daria.
Okay. It's funny you said that because my next question was about the shadow effect and where you had pulled that from. So you just answered that. Is there a part of you that would surprise the readers to discover that is buried inside of Lucas?
Lucas. Let me think. I'm trying to think of what part of Lucas would be
And
like.
there may not be. I mean, it's just a question. I've been asked this question. Like, I've got some characters that, God, I hope there's none of me in them, and vice versa. So it may not be, but
I think well, if we're going to talk about what character, I think all of the characters probably have some part of me, because as their creator, you put a little bit of yourself in each character. But if we're talking about what character is the most like me, it's Trevor. Trevor is going to be the MMC of book 2, and he's Lucas's best friend.
okay.
So Trevor, as you get to read him, he's very sarcastic. He rambles. As you can tell, I ramble.
I'm the same way, and I'm sarcastic. So
Yeah,
we have a lot in
yeah.
common.
His wheels are always turning in his head. I probably, Amy, if you're still in here, you can probably attest to this. Like, my wheels are always turning. I'm always thinking. I'm very idealistic.
I'm like that too.
And if you read Trevor, he's always coming up with these ideas, and they're not always the best, And he's so, even though when you meet him, like I say meet him, but like when you're reading about him, you'll see he's just so smart. And that was one of the things I always said was saved me from a life of poverty. I was always very grateful for my intelligence, for my brain. Not that I'm trying to brag, but
It's a fact.
but you'll
Good
see
that
that
you recognize
in
that.
Trevor.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes his brain, like, he's very smart, he's very driven, he doesn't want the lifestyle that he grew up in. He wants more. He has a helper, like underneath, he's a helper. He likes to help. So that's something about me. I have a big helping heart, love to help. And everybody in the indie hype collective, I feel like has some of the same vibes. We're all in it because we really like to help people. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to ask me about that group as time goes on, but the indie hype collective is something I'm very
I didn't
grateful
even know
for.
that you were in that group, so I didn't know to ask that question.
Yeah,
um,
I put
so
together that group and
you
with
know,
nine
Amy's in
other.
that group, and Amy and I are we do the Tuesday night thing together, and she's always helping me. She keeps me straight. But there's not so much on TikTok. I can't keep up with it all. I try to keep my social media to almost a part time because it can become so consuming that and we already have to wear 7 full time hats when we're indie authors. So I just try to keep. I probably do more on TikTok than I do any other, but I still try to keep it to a little bit of a minimum. But was there a scene in this book that was emotionally difficult to write, not because it was technically challenging, but because it hit maybe too close to home?
Hmm.
Was there anything that maybe you took from your childhood or that small town you were talking about that made it difficult because it was too close?
Mm, No, I think the hardest time, like when I had a hard time getting back to my computer and writing, was when I was dealing with scenes I felt like were boring. When you read my book, you'll see that there's a lot of, even though it goes into some emotional aspects, there's a lot of comedic relief. So, and going back to the fact that I was writing this while I was going through grief and I didn't want to experience very intense emotional stuff, that's where that comes from. So even when you're reading it, you might have moments, and I do have reviews where people say 1 minute they tear up and the next minute they're laughing.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I feel I can definitely say as writing that book. There's going to be moments that you're like, wow, I can't believe she went there. And then you're going to be like, okay, well, at least there was some depth here. Like we've had this scene where there was some depth and it went a little bit further, but it doesn't stay there. I don't try to stay in that place in my writing.
Right. I like that you said the comedic relief because it's important to give writers that. I read a story recently. I was an ARC reader, and it was like a suspense mystery. And you know how you write your sentences are shorter when you're trying to create suspense, and then when you need to let the audience breathe, you make them longer so that they can take a breather. And it wasn't. The whole book was these short, punchy sentences, and I found myself like this reading it. So yeah, I mean, just giving it when you have a traumatic situation, whatever, putting a little bit of comedic relief or sarcasm or something in there where the reader can breathe and go, oh, that was tough, but I got through it. So I love that. And matter of fact, I was going to ask this, which goes right in with that. Was there a moment while writing this book where one of your characters surprised you emotionally?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I ended up having to add more because whenever I went in and made all the changes and went to submit it back to my editor, she was going through some personal stuff, so I had to get a second editor to do kind of like one big overview of just like quick developmental tips, but mainly copy and line editing is what she did. But she told me, she said, your characters really need that pivotal moment that they come together and they build. Like there's a building block. It's not just all like instant chemistry and passion between them. There has to be some foundation. So I ended up writing a scene where they come together and they're talking, and Lucas has that breakthrough moment, and he does have some emotion. And it's interesting because that changed some of the trajectory of what I was writing. So yes, I knew that I was going to make it where Lucas's father became disabled, But prior to that, I ended up making it like his dad was his person. And yes, Trevor was his best friend, but Trevor, you'll see, he's kind of goofy and not always the person that Lucas could go and have that heart to heart with. And his dad was that person. And that helped me develop the relationship that was like, Edith was the first person that he could finally have that connection with, that he lost with that relationship with his father, because his father was his only deep heart to heart person that he could really take his problems to. And he lost that once his dad became disabled. And because both of them have parents that are disabled, they have that connection that intertwines them. And he's able to not just have a surface relationship with her, he's able to go to that next level of depth with her. So I think that was yeah, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm winning you over with my book.
Well, I try to read all the books, but I can't read them. I read very slowly, and by the only time I have to read at least yours, but I go to bed at night. So sometimes I'm so tired. I mean, I worked 12 hours yesterday, so by the time I got in bed, I think I read 3 sentences and I was out. So I'm a very slow reader, but I do try to read all the books, at least one book per author that I interview. I just normally cannot ever have time to read it prior to the interview. But no, this definitely sounds like my cup of tea, kind of like I'm your target audience kind of reader, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I hope so. As long as, even though we're talking about the more in-depth things, I hope that you are a person who likes that kind of humor. So I always tell people when I'm talking about my humor, I think kind of like, do you know who Mindy Kaling is?
No.
She so she was in The Office.
Oh,
She
yes. As soon as
yeah,
you said The Office, because I love that. It's one of my favorite shows. Yeah, I know exactly who Mandy is.
but she wrote, let's see, I would say The Mindy Project, Never Have I Ever. I would say definitely Never Have I Ever vibes, or the SEX Life of College Girls, that's on HBO. I always tell people, I'll be the Adam Sandler of rom-com. So,
Adam Sandler. So yeah,
yeah, so you have to be kind of open to that cringe comedy,
and
because
I love
when
that.
you're reading it, you're gonna feel the secondhand embarrassment of the characters.
Well, I had this discussion with another author recently too, that because I've written one book that I purposely interjected comedy in, and it's kind of for the same purpose we were in my earlier, for a comedic relief from the trauma in the book. But it's actually very difficult. I've heard actors say that acting comedy is the hardest genre to act, because the timing is so precise, and if you don't get the timing just right, the whole scene's screwed up. And I found, because I'm not really a funny person either in real life, like I'm a sarcastic person. I have a dry sense of humor, but not what is a typical, comedy person. And writing it was really difficult for me. Did you have a hard time with that? Or does that come
No,
naturally to you?
no, I probably seem so dry in this interview, but for instance, I was in the cancer center the other day, and while I was sitting there, the guy next to me, this older guy, he looks over and he's talking to me, and we're going, just making conversation while we're waiting for radiation, and he looks at me and goes, "Was it breast cancer?" And I bust out laughing. I said, "Yeah, obviously." I'm like, "You can look down at this flat chest and see they cut them straight off of me." And we're cracking up laughing. And I'm like, "What do you got?" And he told me, he's like, "I have prostate cancer." I'm like, "Well, I hope they didn't cut that out." he's like, "Not yet." And we were talking about our treatment, and he has to do hormone treatment. Like I have to do a hormone treatment, except they're blocking my hormone. They're stealing all my estrogen, because estrogen was making my cancer grow. And for him, he told me he goes, "How about that? They're giving me estrogen to treat my prostate cancer." I
Wow.
said, "Isn't isn't that something? I said, they're taking all my estrogen that makes me a woman, and they're giving it all to you, a man,
Yeah.
and we were just cracking up laughing.
Well,
So
it's good that you can have a sense of humor about that because, you almost, I guess, have to, to manage the deep emotions that come from all that. So,
yeah, but as a person, I would say, you know, I can go in depth with people very easy. I'm kind of a person who I'm just an open book anyways, for the most part, which is interesting because I have this faceless account where I'm remaining anonymous. But that's more for my daytime career whenever I can get back to it. But as far as a human, I just vibe with people. So if a person is a more serious person, I can go there. I can be more serious. I'm such an extrovert in that way, but I do have this silly side of me, which, like I said, you'll see in Trevor's character. I can be very, very silly. So, and it's fun when I get around somebody I banter with like that. And since I moved to South Carolina, I'm telling you, every time I banter really well with somebody, I'm like, "Where are you from?" They're like, "North Carolina." I'm like, "I knew it. I knew it. We're naughty Carolina. We have the best humor."
That's funny. Interesting. Maybe I need to move to North Carolina. I do have a sense of humor and I can definitely catch up or catch on when someone is doing that. But I think I'm just not naturally a funny person myself. I use humor, I guess, like comedians do to kind of deflect, the depression or whatever it is I'm feeling, or grief, things that I'm going through. I'll use humor more then than I will even when things are going fine in life. I'm not as funny. I think we just all have our ways of dealing with things, and humor, is one way. A lot of comedians, famous comedians, I mean, look at Robin Williams. He said that's how he dealt with his depression and things like that. So we just have different ways of dealing with it. I am not an extrovert. I can be when I need to be, like at the book conventions and stuff like that. I can be, but it wears me slap out. It'll take me a week to get over a convention because I had to be, out there for 8 hours or whatever. So we're just built all different, but we're all necessary.
I always tell people there's nothing wrong with that either. Because when you look at someone who's an introvert versus an extrovert, one's not better or worse than the other.
Different.
I always admire introverts, how well they're able to observe situations and, their ability to be reserved, because that's something that it takes a lot of work for me. It's really hard for me sometimes to say, okay, let's not enter foot completely in mouth today.
Well, I'm bad about that too now. So I used to say the only time I ever open my mouth is to switch feet. I'm terrible about that. Just ask my children. I've got just a few questions left. And I know I try to cut it off at 8, but if you have time and you're okay, can we run just a minute over?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I wanted to ask, if someone was to read all of your books back to back, what would they learn about you without you ever telling them directly?
That's interesting. Well, I only have one out.
Well, but you've got more in your head. So how many books are going to be in this series, by the way?
So I thought it would be 3, but as I was writing or start writing book 2, I'm realizing I'm going to have to break into a part 1, part 2. So I'm thinking there's probably going to be at least 4 books in the series because the next book is a love triangle, and it's going to be between Trevor, Veronica, which is Edith's sister, and Trevor, in book 1, he meets the waitress that he starts dating. Her name's Cheyenne. So there's going to be a love triangle, and it's just too much to pack into one book.
Yeah.
So there'll be 2 parts to that. And then the 3rd book, I don't want to give away who that's going to be about yet. Or, well, it'll probably be the 4th book, but, the next big romance that's to come.
Love triangles are always a trope that we all love. Even all the way back to Twilight, we love those love triangles. So I can't wait to read those as well.
I always say love triangles are best when you cannot choose who the person should be with. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're like, I have no idea. Like I want Trevor with Cheyenne, but I also want Trevor with Veronica. Like I can
You're
see,
torn. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, assuming that your 4 books were already written and someone was to read them back to back, what would they learn about you?
Probably that I try to weave in some purpose in every book, even like no matter how silly it is. There's kind of like a fable, you remember Aesop's fables that
Oh, yes,
we
of
used to have
course.
to read when we were kids.
Yes.
There's some kind of underlying message that's underneath that, and that you have to just kind of take a step back and think about, like,
Think about
what did I gather from this?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I do the same with my books. Like I write multiple genres, so there's romance and romantic suspense and historic romance and stuff. But I do try to put little scenes or sentences or little interjections in there that make someone, even in the middle of reading, to just stop and go, or highlight it. I'm bad about highlighting books, things that I want to remember, or be able to go back and reference. So I like to interject things like that too. And the last 2 questions I have are just kind of quirky little questions, just to finish us off. What's something small that brings you disproportionate joy?
Something small. Well, my kid's small. He brings me infinite joy.
Yes, yeah. And enjoy that while it lasts, because my kids are all grown. That changes.
I know they grow so fast too. Because when I was when I was coming up, most of my friends had their kids in their teenage years, so I got to be very involved with their kids a lot when I was younger, and it was very interesting. But I loved it, and they consider me their godmother or their aunt. And now I look at them, and some of them are in their 20s. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where did time go?
And I didn't mean that like I'm a bad mother. I love my children, even though they're grown. My baby is 26 and my oldest one's 39, and I got one in between. And they give me joy now. It's just a different kind of joy. Like I've always been about the babies, and I love the babies and the toddlers. And so the joy that they bring me now is so vastly different from what it was when they were, stepping on my toes and following me to the bathroom and all the things that I thought drove me crazy at the time, but I miss so much now. So I love that it's your son that brings you disproportionate joy. That's wonderful. And the last question, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
There's so many out there.
Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, I could tell you my favorite bad word easily.
You must watch the Actor Studio. That's what he always asks. What's your favorite cuss word?
The F word, definitely.
Well, and I was going to say, and it's funny because almost every single one of them, they said the F word. So, and I would say that's probably mine too. I'm the world's worst about dropping that bomb when I do something.
I know, it's horrible. I did try to keep it to a very minimum in my book, though. As far as the cursing and stuff like that. There's one scene, but it's because of the character that I'm just like, I didn't feel like the character would be believable if he was calling people like butt heads and stuff like that. It had to be.
It's hard to make a tough character sound tough without cussing, because I have very few cuss words in any of my books. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you just kind of have to. I don't drop the F-bomb in them, but sometimes you just have to make the character believable. Like you said, it's hard to, mine are like, especially in my Safe House series, they're special ops agents, and they're not going to say, don't be a moron, dude, so it's kind of, that's hard to skirt around. So you can't think of a favorite word besides the F word?
I know, it's horrible. You put me on the spot with these questions. My brain's going to actually.
Okay, it's okay. You don't have to answer it.
No, I'm saying my brain's going to the word actually because sometimes I find myself saying that a lot.
Like what?
Actually, like when somebody says something, I'm like, actually, and then, saying whatever after that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Daria, I really enjoyed talking to you. I can't wait to read your book. I wish I had thought ahead because I knew you were doing a Faceless account, and I usually have people lift up a copy of their book. But if you haven't already, if you're not following Daria, please follow her because she's obviously a wonderful, brilliant person, and we want to support her. The Unplanned Orchid is the name of her first book. When is your second book going to come out?
That I'm not sure because, like I said, cancer treatment's really slowing me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was hoping that I would have it out by the end of 27, but it may have to be longer because my writing is just, it's not coming as easy. And like I said, I'm not doing what I was doing before, staying up at night to write after I get my little one down, because, sleep is so important. I didn't realize how important sleep was till I got diagnosed with cancer. And then I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have skipped that this whole entire time. But I am hoping I'm a slow writer. It may take a while, but hopefully I gain some people who enjoy it. I always tell people because I am a slow writer, I try not to leave books on awful cliffhangers.
Yeah, I hate cliffhangers. Please don't do that to us.
Yeah, I try not to leave awful cliffhangers. So even with the book, the upcoming one, how I told you, book 2 and book 3 is probably going to be spread out with the love triangle. I've thought of how to end the second book so that way it feels like there's some closure, even though the third book will go from there. And you'll see that with my books too, is when you open it, it's like wham, drama in your face, the first chapter. So I kind of put the drama sometimes a little bit up front, and then instead of leaving you guys on horrible cliffhangers. But do you mind if I shout out my the Indie Hype Collective?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so just in case there's other authors that are listening, indie authors, I started a group, the Indie Hype Collective. There's 9 other people in it, 10 of us total. And what we do is we try to put out posts. I just released a post, I think yesterday. Forgive my chemo brain. But the posts are for book submissions, and that's for indie authors to drop their book submission, their indie book that they want to submit. And our team will look over them. We all nominate a book, and then after that, we vote on our nominated books. And we try to narrow it down to 1 book per date. And from there, once we have that 1 book per date that we're going to do, on that date, we go and we all release posts to help promote that book, because our goal is essentially trying to push your book out to the FYP, since that's what we were struggling. That's what I seen. I'm like, there's a need for us indie authors to get our book to the FYP. And honestly, you do not want to see my video stats for today. It really blows my mind. I think it's because I did release the post yesterday that now the talk is suppressing my videos today really bad. So I hope that tomorrow, when we do our promotion day for the book that we're doing, which is Sarita Benjamin's book, Every Goodbye Ain't Gone is the book that we're promoting, that we're able to push through that suppression. So we go in, we make our post about that book. There'll be,
y'all do a live, or do you just individually post?
We individually post on our page,
okay,
and then we go and repost.
Okay.
I ask everybody, if you come across those posts, please try to help engage, repost. If you want to go buy that author's book, that would be great too, because this is all about trying to be a community here, supporting each other, trying to get our books out to the FYP. And tomorrow's going to be all about Sarita Benjamin and trying to get her book out. So if you see Sarita Benjamin's post from us, please try to engage with that so we can help her have a successful promotion day tomorrow. And then if you want to participate, go to my page, go to the pinned post. The next one I think is July 11th. The post just came out, so it's a perfect time to jump on and list your book on there, to see if you get selected for our next promotion day. So it's just a great opportunity to help each other.
Well, I'm all about that. I actually, this is my author page, author Casey Mitchell, where I promote the 11 books that I've written to date. But I also have, especially in the last, 3 months, I've been doing Indie Author Access, which is this is the name of this program that I'm interviewing you on. But I found that my views have just tanked, and I've done a lot of research on it, and it said I probably confused the algorithm because I was pushing and promoting my own writing and my behind the scenes and my books and stuff. And then about 3 months ago, I started also pushing other indie authors and their books and the Indie Author Access, where I interview other, indie authors. And so I decided about a week ago to start my own separate account on here on TikTok, that I literally only push and publish, or not publish, but push out and post other indie authors. So I named that Indie Author Access. So the name of the channel is Indie Author Access, and the name of this program that I'm going to continue to do is called Indie Author Access. I'm in the process now. I'm trying to build to about 1,000 followers. I've got a little over 500 now, by the first of the month, because I'm hoping to move this program, Indie Author Access, to that platform, Indie Author Access, by July, so I can kind of separate, a division, a divorce, whatever you want to call it, my author stuff from promoting other indie authors, so that the algorithm can figure out who the heck I am and what the heck I'm doing here to start pushing the views out. It seems to be working actually a little bit already, even though I'm still hosting this program on this account. I'm doing most of my pushing other indie authors out more on the other account. And the algorithm already, my views have gone back up to a couple of hundred, which I know is still terrible. But for a while there, they were like 40-ish. It was terrible. So it's building back up, and it's starting to suggest readers to me instead of only other indie authors to me. I think it's working. So yeah, and I'm all about helping. I think on the book talk community, especially the indie author book talk community, the more we help each other, that old saying, when you raise the water, all the boats rise. And I just feel like, we're not in competition here, not as authors and not as indie authors and not as indie author supporters. If we're supporting each other and helping each other, reading each other's book, promoting each other's post, then we're all just going to do better. And I love that you're doing that, and that Amy's doing that with you. She said there are so many good ones on the next list. Okay. I love that y'all are doing that. And I say kudos to you. Let's all just kind of get in here and do it together. The more we promote each other, the more we promote indie authors, the more, vitality we're going to have in this community. And I'm all about supporting that. So for sure. Now, before you jump off, tell us where they can find your book. I know it's on the Zon, because I'm looking at the Zon, and that's where I downloaded it to my KU. But you tell us wherever else they can find this book. The Unplanned Orchid is the name of it.
So you can mainly find it on the Zon. It's on KU. So if you want to do, download it through KU, there's that option. It's on Spark, the Spark. I don't know. I don't want to say anything that gets you dinged.
Yeah, we have to be so careful on here. It's ridiculous.
I know it's on the Spark, and the Spark actually has it listed on a lot of different sites for the paperback and in the hardcover book. Right. So you might see it on other ones, like I've seen one website called Everest and different ones like that. But I would say the the main options is to go through Spark or go through the Zon and KU.
Okay. Sounds perfect. Y'all, if you're not already following Daria, follow her. Make sure to check out, I wrote this down, Indie Hype Collective. And so let's support them as well. And please check out Indie Author Access channel. Follow me there, especially starting July 1st. I'll be moving all of this over there. So follow me over there and check out Daria's book, The Unplanned Orchid. It sounds adorable. It sounds deep. It sounds wonderful and funny and sad and all the things that we want. So Daria, thank you so much for joining me. Everyone that's been hanging in there with us, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate y'all. And Daria, when you get around to that second book, it's fine if it's 2027, whatever, reach out to me again. I'd love to have you back so we can promote it. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And congratulations on your 11 books. When you said 11 books, I'm like, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Amy and I actually had the dual thing on Tuesday. My 4th book in the series come out and her 2nd book in her series come out. So we had a dual launch party on Tuesday, which went really well. I thought we had a good time. It was in between that and our normal Tuesday night thing. We were on here for 3.5 hours. I'm like, oh my gosh. When I got off, I was just like, somebody shoot me, please.
Oh yeah, because you said you're an introvert too.
Yeah.
I imagine that had to be tough.
I was worn out. I literally took a Xanax and went to bed. But I survived. And one-on-one like this doesn't bother me. That's why I decided when I was looking at what I wanted to do to promote indie authors, I didn't want to do things like, like Mama D. She's so outgoing and so vivacious, and she'll have 10 or 12 or 15 people on there. I would literally rather have my teeth pulled than have to do that. I do much better with one-on-one or maybe 2-on-1. The Tuesday night thing we do, it's Amy and Charmin and I. That's fine. That's especially with them. I know them well now. I feel like they're good friends now, so I'm very comfortable with that. But yeah, when you start doing 10 and 15 and 20 and 30 people at one time, or 2 or 3 or 4 hours at one time, I'm just like, my whatever system is like, cut it off. Yes, it's exhausting.
I feel the same way. I enjoy doing smaller things one-on-one because I feel like when I have jumped on, see, you pushed me to jump on lives. I didn't do lives before, but when you asked me, it was interesting because Book Villainous, she was like, okay, well, come on my live and you can practice, because I told her I was so nervous jumping on this, that this was supposed to be my first.
That. You don't seem nervous at all. You seem like an old pro. So you did. Kudos to you.
She told me to come practice, so I did. And I enjoy talking with her. She's so great. She's sweet. She's a part of the Indie Hype Collective as well. But she'll get more and more people on. And when she does, I'm like, okay, well, thank you. I'm going to hop off here. I'll send you gifts so it helps promote your live. Yeah. Because I kind of get a little overstimulated and feel like, oh, when do I speak? I don't want to talk over somebody, and I'm a talker as well. So it makes it kind of more difficult because I'll have those moments I want to speak up.
Well, and to me, if you've got 3 or 4 people already on there, and what I found with those lives that have, 6 or 8 people waiting in line for their turn, they're literally just sitting there and you can see their faces and they're sitting there, waiting for their turn. And then, like I used to hop on Mama D's, what she call them, Mix and Mingle, I think. And I have waited as long as 8 hours to get on there to have my 5 minutes of fame, to be able to talk about my book. And it's just, to me, it was too much. Kudos to Mama D for being able to do that. I wish I was more like that so that I could help more people and promote more indie authors. But for me, I'm more of a one-on-one kind of gal. And I also, I tend to be a little bit more of a deep thinker. I like to ask, the not so typical questions like, what made you want to write? And, those questions that we hear every interview that we do. I like to ask some different questions. So I do a little digging before I actually, I do a little research on the authors that I have come up so I can ask you more deep questions about your book and, how you wrote
do. You ask very deep questions.
I'm
I
sorry, I hope
appreciate
it
it.
wasn't too much.
No, I really appreciate it.
I
It
usually give
made
this
me
spiel
think.
at the beginning that if I ask a question you're uncomfortable with, feel free to say pass. And I forgot to say that at the beginning. I'm sorry, but you did great. You did fantastic. And as far as the live, I've actually had a lot of authors that didn't have a huge following, so they may not have done the lives before. And just for future reference, when you get to the point where you're interviewing other authors, I have done like a face call. What do you call it? A FaceTime call with them. And, just for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm like, towards the end of it, I'm like, this FaceTime call with you where you're looking at me and I'm looking at you, this is exactly what a live is like. The only difference is there's other people watching. So don't say something you don't want the world to know. And there'll be comments popping up. So you're trying to read the comments and post comments and talk to the other person and read the questions and do everything else at the same time. So it makes it a little busy. But yeah, you did a fantastic job. I would have never known you were nervous if you hadn't just said that. So,
Thank
but
you.
anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And I just wish you the best. I will be praying for you.
Thank
Complete
you for
healing
having me.
emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. Because I know what you've been through is just hell and back. And I just want the very, very best for you.
Well,
So,
I appreciate the prayers. I'm hanging in there. Most of the treatment, if you look, sometimes I make posts about breast cancer to try to help people understand like things I'm doing that's helping it be tolerable that might help
yeah.
other people. And the reason I did that was because while I was scrolling TikTok, it's like as soon as you get cancer and you look up anything about cancer, then all these cancer videos come up. And I was on a post and somebody was, anti going the traditional chemotherapy treatment and all that. And not that I'm knocking it because I am a person who is always like, yeah, if you can find a more holistic way to deal with things, that's great. But the research is out there that a larger percentage of people end up passing who are trying to go holistic instead of doing the chemo and doing the things that should be done.
Yeah.
And the things that were being said really threw me because it was very negative about modern medicine. And they were knocking chemotherapy and everything else. And I was like, yeah, but you rejected it. Like in my brain, I'm like, you rejected doing it. Why are you making all these horrible statements about it? So I was just like, just to kind of give the other perspective here, as somebody who has done chemo, I do want to say modern medicine has made its strides. Like they give you all these extra medications to help manage the symptoms from chemotherapy. So like I never threw up, but if you watch television about people who have who go through chemotherapy, you have all these fears and reservations going in it. All right, you think it's going to be the total pits and then you do it and you're like, yeah, this is not fun, but the worst part is like the brain fog and how it affects my brain now because of what chemo does. And then of course, like I do have some residual swallowing issues that aren't great. But as far as like being able to I think I took like 2 naps the whole time I was on chemo, and I was on it for 12 weeks. Well, I had to do it every 3 weeks for 12 weeks. And never threw up. The anti-nausea medication really managed that. I'm like, but here's this person who's pushing it out like this is the worst thing possible you could do to yourself. And it's like, no, this is saving lives. Like this is saving my life. This is saving plenty of lives. Oncologists, I promise you, are not going to medical school just so they can rob people of their money. Like most oncologists you meet, who would do that? Who would honestly, like if I had the love for because I'm really grossed out very easily. Oh, That's what I can say I got from Lucas is I'm very squeamish. If I wasn't squeamish and I could have became a doctor, and if you think about that, if anyone could be a doctor, how many people would say, I want to go work in oncology? That's probably like one of the saddest fields to work in as a doctor. So the people who are doing that usually have this love and heart for
Yeah,
people because they probably went through losing someone through cancer and stuff.
a lot of
So they're
times.
not so this idea that people on social media are putting out about cancer treatment just being there to rob people and make them sick and keep them sick and stuff like that really bothered me. And
Well, I
that's
think to me, anything to do with your health care, just like your life, I'm very much a live and let live kind of person. I'm not the kind that says, well, you've got cancer, you need to do chemotherapy, or you've got cancer, you need to try this holistic thing. I myself have made some untraditional choices. I've never had cancer, but I have some chronic issues that I went to doctors for 12 years before I got a diagnosis, and it was a horrible experience. And the only way I finally did it was through a traditional doctor, but he was also a naturopathic doctor. So he did both, which I appreciated. But to me, it's a very personal choice and decision. So I'm not ever going to tell someone else, you need to do this way or you need to do that way. To me, when you come to the crossroads of any kind of health decision for your own body or your own family, you need to explore all options and then decide what's best for you and be open-minded to all options because, like you just said, modern medicine has grown leaps and bounds, and so has naturopathic. Naturopathic's older, it's been around for thousands of years, but there's still things we're learning about it. So to me, to use a platform like TikTok or any other platform to say this is all bad and this is all good is the most ludicrous concept because I think there's good and bad for both options. And I think that's something that each person has to weigh for themselves to decide what's best for them and their life and their age and their health, before they had the diagnosis. Because, there are some people, I can see maybe because of that. My mother's 90 and a half, and she's always said if she was ever diagnosed with cancer, she wouldn't go through the treatment. I'm like, I get that. I'm 62 and I'm not sure if I would because at my age and where I'm at in my life, I think I might be okay, but you don't ever know that. You don't know that. You can't say what you would or wouldn't do until you're faced with that decision. And it needs to be a very personal decision for each person to choose for themselves. They know what they're capable of. They know what they want. They know their zest for life. They know, their preconceived ideas about whatever. And I just think that, yeah.
Like even my oncologist, I actually just switched to her because she practices integrative oncology too, and she's more open. Where the doctor I had before, she was against me like using turkey tail mushrooms, even though there's so many positive things. And Japan uses turkey tail mushrooms in addition to doing chemotherapy and radiation and stuff. So I switched to a more integrative doctor, and I'm not against integrative, holistic, naturopaths. Like I think that's great. But, it's one of those things, like you said, it's not knocking one or the other. And that's why when I make the post I make, it's not to argue. Like, I'm not trying to argue with the people who keep popping up in my FYP that's anti-chemo and all that. It's just to say, hey, this is what I'm doing this is what I'm doing that's making it tolerable.
There probably are more people who are against chemotherapy and traditional medicine that are more outspoken about it, especially on platforms like this, than there are, doctors or cancer patients who are more outspoken. So I think both views need to be out there. The information for both sides needs to be out there. And I think there's merit for both sides. Obviously, since I have a strong, naturopathic background, but that doesn't mean I don't go to the doctor when I'm sick. I'm still going to the doctor. I'm still want the antibiotic. I still want the vaccine. But I just think we need to not, and it's like with everything else, with religion or society or politics or anything, healthcare is the same way to me. you can't tell someone else what they believe or what they need to do. You need to do some soul searching to decide what's best for you. And that's what you need to stick with, is what's best for you, and quit trying to tell everybody else how they need to live, because that's just, I mean, who has ever changed their mindset about something because they watched a TikTok video about it or a commercial about it? You know, nobody, not one single person. So I think it's just a personal thing that we have to look at.
But I will say that I do feel like that's happening though, medically, that there's people who are strongly believing these ideas that doing certain treatments, that people are taking certain roads that people are saying on TikTok is what is going to heal them, versus, you know, sometimes listening to what the doctors are saying. Because when unfortunately, like I said, those kind of posts keep popping up, and I'll see the comments, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like these comments, like it just blows my mind, the amount of people that are so have in their mind so anti oncologist and oncology, like traditional treatment, the you know, Western traditional treatment route.
I've had a lot of friends, unfortunately, that have had cancer, and some of them have passed away. A lot of them have been given a lot longer life. I mean, I literally just lost a friend just a few years ago, and when he was diagnosed, I think they gave him 3 months to live, and he lived 12 years because of chemo and radiation. I mean, he had to endure that for 12 years, but he lived for 12 more years. So I think, like I said, there's merit on both sides, and people that are just so closed-minded to either side, to me, then that's on them. You know, they have to live with it. But
the sad thing is that internet can create these echo chambers, especially with the algorithm, and it's scary. You know, I think that's the biggest thing, is it's scary to me that there are people, because of the algorithm, that are getting sucked into these echo chambers, and what could potentially be misinformation becomes the truth to them. Or not even misinformation, but it may not be the best thing. Like, for instance, there's a lot of stuff that pops up about Joe Tippins. Followed the Joe Tippins protocol, because Joe Tippins was somebody who was in a cancer study that his cancer was cured. And I forget what it was. I want to say it was one of those parasite medications. So everyone's like, follow the Joe Tippins. But I decided to do like a Google research about it, because you know, anything you see on the internet, you should take some time to Google research, not take it as true. And it was interesting because they said there were like a whole bunch of people in that study that was doing the same protocol as him, but he was the only one in the protocol that was healed. All the other people, it didn't heal them. He was the only single one. But for some reason, it's all over the internet. Follow this, his protocol, and you will be healed from cancer. It's like,
you have to do your research. No. You know, it's like everything else. I mean, if you're Googling what kind of motorbike to get, buyer beware. You have to do your research, regardless of what it is. But I know I've kept you way, way, way past, because we were just talking, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. But I do want to let you get back to your family. I appreciate you so much. I'm enjoying getting to know you and being part of your Indie Hype collective. And I'm going to try to jump in there and do part of that. I actually today made the decision to back away a little bit, because I'm just so burnt out from everything, and I've got a convention in 2 weeks and stuff. But I will at some point jump back in there. But I've enjoyed getting to know you. Thank you, all of you guests that have hung in there with us. We appreciate you. Again, go get her book. And, you know, let's just support this wonderful, wonderful author, Daria Kay. So any final words you want to throw in there, Daria, before we hang up?
No, I just want to tell you, I appreciate you taking this time talking with me.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it so much. Don't hang up. I need to cut you off. Otherwise, you won't get your little credits or whatever you got for tonight. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank y'all for joining us. We appreciate y'all. And I'll see you next Friday on Indie Author Access. And next Friday is, let me look at my calendar. Oh, no, it's not. I've got 2 more weeks on here before we switch to the Indie Author Access account. But make sure you follow Daria and me here, and me on Indie Author Access. All right. Thank y'all. Bye-bye. Bye, Daria.
Bye.